As many of you know, I have many controversial guests, so that comes at a cost of being demonetized everywhere. So if you want to support the program, go to fightbackpodcast.com, and I have all kinds of merch on there, whether it's jiu-jitsu, fighting, political, and other accessories. And thanks for the support. Hey, I'm here with I'm terrible with names. Is it Kevork? Almost how you say your name? I
Ke-
apologize.
Kevork Almassian.
I said, yeah, and you're a Syrian journalist. You've been in and out of Syria. You're currently in Germany because
Yes,
you're a
exactly.
Christian, so you'd probably be getting persecuted if you were
hmm
there.
hmm hmm
This is such a complex thing we're about to unpack. What's going on in Syria? So it's hard for me to know even where to start. I'm probably going to stop you a few times and ask you some really dumb questions because I know I have a very small understanding of it. I do know, as an American citizen, though, like my government has been trying to overthrow Assad for 10 plus years, which I always thought was ridiculous. And I'm not sitting here saying Assad was some great guy or anything along that, but it just seemed like he was clearly, at least in my opinion, you might disagree, I think he was clearly better option than what we have now, which is people being slaughtered, the Christians, Muslims. It's not just Christians, that's what's going viral on Twitter, but it's Christians, certain Muslims, I believe Kurds. Well, you know a lot more than me, so I guess I'll just ask you your first thing is what was your thoughts on Assad and then the U.S. government and Israel and stuff trying to overthrow him?
By the way, Jake, in my first year in the university, I used to study international relations and diplomacy, and I raised my hand and I said, "I'm really sorry, my professor. Maybe this is a dumb question." And he said,
Yeah.
"There is no dumb question. There is a dumb answer." So it's all exploration for everyone what's happening. And Middle East is
Yeah, I,
quite complex, as you may know, and Iraq is similar and different from Syria. Syria is similar and different from Lebanon. So even ourselves, when we live in Syria and we go from one city to another and we discover new things about our country, a new culture, a new language, because Syria is a very multi-ethnic, multicultural, multi-religious country, and it's a product of centuries of different civilizations passing through Syria. Therefore, they are leaving their fingerprints, their languages, their civilization, values. So our identity is entrenched deep root inside history. So it's a 7,000-year-old civilizations living up until this moment, including people who still speak Aramaic, the language of Jesus Christ. If you go to one of the towns called Ma'lula, for example, it's a very ancient Christian city, people still speak Aramaic, but I'm receiving troubling reports that people are living in mass, especially the Christians, the Alawites, because the people who have taken over are basically Al-Qaeda affiliate. Now, you asked me about Assad. Assad,
yeah.
the son, right? So the father of Assad, he came to power in 1970 after a coup. And this was an era where Syria lived over 10 coup d'etats, and he did the final coup. In 10 years, Syria witnessed many coup d'etats, and it was unstable country. And his father established modern Syria, which means the infrastructure, schools, universities, electricity, everything started from that era. Then when his son succeeded, let's say, the power, he wanted to modernize the country. So under his father, it was more socialist leaning. His son started to open up the markets with different regional and international powers. And the West was very happy with him. Like Hillary Clinton was praising him as a reformer and a secular. Tony Blair used to visit him in Damascus, take him back to London, meeting with Queen Elizabeth, not Queen Elizabeth, the Queen basically back then, who recently died. Yeah, it was Elizabeth, right? Anyways, so he was accepted in the West as some sort of a reformer. However, in 2003, when the US and the UK occupied Iraq, the Americans came with new demands for Assad. It's not enough to open up your markets and allowing foreign investment, etc., but you have to also reorient your country geopolitically on the side of the US and Israel. And this was the point when Saddam Hussein was overthrown, and Colin Powell, the former Secretary of State of the US, visited Syria, and he met with Assad telling him, look, we are now the bosses of the Middle East, and you have to listen to us, and we have to walk you through this political transformation, which means you have to abandon your allies, Russia and Iran, and you have to stop supporting the Palestinian and the Lebanese armed struggle against Israel, which means you have to close all the offices of the Palestinian factions in your country and also the Lebanese, because Syria used to be a territory where the Lebanese and the Palestinian factions had a safe haven. They stay in Syria, they get weapons from Syria, they get training from Syria against Israel. So this was the point where Colin Powell came. He wanted to dictate what Syria has to do, and Assad told him that he is not going to comply with these demands. And this is when George W. Bush labeled Syria as a member of the axis of evil. Oh, wow. So they started imposing sanctions on Syria, and they started to support the opposition in Syria against Assad in order to coup him, basically, to remove him from power. And they had their moment in, they wanted to come after Assad, but they thought that it was easier to come after Hezbollah in 2006, because Hezbollah was a major ally of Syria, and they thought that they can knock out Hezbollah.
Hezbollah's in Lebanon, correct?
Yes, exactly. Right. So when Israel invaded Lebanon in July 2006, Assad opened all the military warehouses and gave unlimited support to Hezbollah in order to force the Israeli occupation forces to leave Lebanon. And after 33 days, Israel was forced to accept a ceasefire and withdraw from from Lebanon. And this is when the Western governments, Israel, US, they realized that Assad is not going to change his mind about this issue with Israel. However, Sarkozy, back then the French president, French prime minister president back then, he convinced the American and his Western allies that we have to give Assad one last chance. And he invited Assad to Paris, rolled him a red carpet, basically. And this was on a French National Day. So it's the biggest day in Europe, and all the leaders are there, and he is standing among all the world leaders. And on a world stage, back then, the prime minister of Israel was, I will remember his name now, but the prime minister of Israel was there. And they tried to trick Assad to shake hands with Ehud Olmert. So Ehud Olmert. So on the stage, if your respected audience are watching, they can go on YouTube and just search Assad, Olmert, Mouse and Mickey Mouse or something like that. Yeah. And you will see that how Ban Ki-moon back then, the French foreign minister, the Qatari emir, everybody was pushing Assad on the side of Olmert so that they shake hands and finally they make peace. And the moment Olmert came to force Assad to shake hands, he turns his back and he walks away from the stage. And everybody was watching. This was live on TV. And this is in 2008. And this is when they realized that it's not going to work with Assad. And there is a testimony for the former French minister in 2008 saying that he received instructions from the UK saying that they will start a regime change in Syria and they expect France to participate. And he said, I don't want to be part of it. So they started to cook this, let's say, in 2008, 2009. And they started it in 2011 and managed and succeeded in 2024.
Yeah, I know it's been crazy. I've been watching it for a long time. And Trump, during his first regime, he wasn't, he wouldn't go for it. I mean, I'm sure you know they did what appeared to be a fake gas attack, and that's when Trump bombed him for a second, but didn't go regime change. That just shows you how crazy our government was. Like, remember Trump? He ordered withdrawals of full troops, and the general was like bragging about how he didn't listen and left troops in there. They were faking gas attacks. Just shows how bad they wanted the regime change. And it's crazy. I'm sure you know all this. I make sure I have this correct. But weren't we basically directly giving weapons to ISIS or to ISIS's ally? Not ISIS. Or I think it was ISIS at the time, but Al-Qaeda now. We were giving them weapons. So we were at war with ISIS, and we were supplying their allies with weapons that were getting in ISIS's and Al-Qaeda's hands to overthrow the regime. It's complete madness.
Yes. In 2011, Obama put his signature on Operation Timber Sycamore. And Operation Timber Sycamore is a covert CIA operation in Syria, which funneled $1 billion per year weapons, ammunition, and training to these Takfiri jihadi groups in Syria. And he put his signature after reading a report from the American Defense Intelligence Agency, basically telling him that the driving force behind the insurgency in Syria are Al-Qaeda and Muslim Brotherhood groups. And Obama knowingly, he authorized this operation in Syria. But however, in front of the international public and the American public, you cannot simply give weapons to Al-Qaeda, and just like they did in Afghanistan. So Obama used to come and say, oh, we have the moderate rebels in Syria. We're giving them the weapons to the moderate rebels. But we in Syria, we didn't see moderate rebels. We didn't recognize that they are moderate rebels. They created names for these military units to give them weapons, but all these weapons ended up in the hands of ISIS and
So was it
al-Nusra.
basically kind of an offshoot of ISIS, so basically it was a cover, so they could give them weapons more or less? My friend sent me something crazy before this interview. It was a wanted poster for $10 million with, what's the guy's name who's the president there now, or whatever you call it?
Abu Muhammad Jolani, and they call him now Ahmad Shara, but his Al-Qaeda name is Jolani.
Yeah, Giuliani. That's what he said, Giuliani, and it was a wanted poster for him with $10 million. Was this accurate that he sent me? Because it seems seems pretty insane. This guy was one of the most wanted men in the world from America, and now he's is president or prime minister? What do they call it in Syria?
He selected himself as the president.
Yeah, and aren't we like pretty much officializing it and meeting with them now, acting like it's just normal when this guy was one of the top guys in our world terrorist list? It's pretty wild.
Jack, do you think that if the U.S. wanted to kill him and they spared him, like they could have killed him for a long time?
Yeah.
They put a bounty on his head, $10 million. It's for public consumption. Like he's the leader of the Al-Qaeda in Syria. How can the United States not act against him, right? However, I will tell you a few facts about this. In 2012, Jake Sullivan, I'm sure most of your viewers know, he was working for Hillary Clinton in 2012. Then he became the national security advisor for Biden. Under Hillary Clinton, he sent her an email. And in the email, it says, you can find this on WikiLeaks. It says, Al-Qaeda is on our side in Syria. He's telling his boss that Al-Qaeda is on our side in Syria. And then WikiLeaks leaked these emails to the public. And we read it and we saw it. And Hillary Clinton also said in one of the emails that removing Assad from power is a positive development because this will cause a civil war between the Shias and the Sunnis, and this benefits Israel. This is what she said in the emails, basically.
Yeah,
but there is more absurd thing. For example, the former special envoy for the U.S. to Syria, his name is James Jeffrey, he told the press directly, it's not like leaked, this is what he said to the press, to the PBS, that Jolani's army has been an asset for the U.S. strategy in Syria. So they used this man for a long time to destabilize Syria.
Yeah, I even read that Israel was treating, ISIS and Al-Qaeda prisoners in their hospitals, and this was directly what we were at war with them. So it's just like some ally is that, but it's like America too. It just, as an American, I look at this, it just makes no sense. That was right at the peak of our war with supposedly, ISIS and Al-Qaeda, and then we're supplying with weapons. Israel's literally treating the soldiers in their hospitals. It's pure insanity. And this stuff is not speculation. This is like well-known, documented stuff.
Yeah, actually, those were the Al-Nusra Front terrorists, which means they were from the offshoot of Al-Qaeda. They fight with Jolani. And the former head of Mossad was challenged by Mehdi Hassan, who once did a good journalism in his life when he used to work for Al Jazeera. And he pushed back against this, and he asked him, like, are you not afraid to host Al-Qaeda militants in your hospitals and giving them, like, treatment? Like, are you not afraid of a blowback? He said, no, I'm not afraid of blowback. He said, this is pure humanitarian. However, we have to act humanely when these terrorists are coming.
Yeah,
and
Israel acting humanely.
Yeah, and then Mehdi Hassan asked him just 1 second later, okay, if a Hezbollah fighter gets injured, do you take him for medical treatment? He says, no, we don't take Hezbollah fighters for treatment. And he says, you're just contradicting yourself. And he says, no, I'm not contradicting myself because according to my relocation or his memory, Al-Qaeda has never attacked Israel, unlike Hezbollah. And Mahdi says, but they attacked your number one ally. He said, yes, but they never attacked Israel. I think the question there should have been, why Al-Qaeda has never attacked. And I'm not calling for Al-Qaeda attack against Israel
that is
at
an
all.
excellent question. No, that is an excellent question. Why has Al-Qaeda never attacked Israel? That's a very, very interesting question. And for them to act like humanitarian anyone that's watched what they've done to Palestinian children for the last 18 months is, you can see these people don't have humanity. That's not their interest. So for you, being a Christian, what was life like under Assad versus what you're not there now, but you said you just left Syria right before. What would it be like now? I mean, I've seen videos that look horrendous, and it's not just Christians; they're killing Muslims as well. A lot of people don't realize it's not just Christians and Kurds being persecuted; it's the Muslim sects. So what was it like, and what's the difference basically between before and after?
Yeah. So we have to be honest with ourselves with Assad, because under Assad, we had a political authoritarianism. It was a very centralized political power. You can do whatever you want in your life, business, sports, culture, religion, everything, you're free, but don't come closer to politics. And when I say politics, don't challenge the main authority in the country. Yeah. Other than that, you were free, but it's not perfect. I myself, I would like to live in a country where I have the free speech. I would like to challenge the authority, and probably why not? Like, I like to also run in politics. Why not? Mm-hmm. But this was not possible under Assad. This is we have to be honest with ourselves. And however, he presented the social freedoms, the religious freedoms to the people. So you can practice your religion the way you want, your rituals. You're a Christian, Muslim, Jew, and different dominations and sects. But he always had overseen what they're speaking in the mosques, for example. Like, the speeches should not be political, should not be radical, they shouldn't radicalize the people to become Al-Qaeda or ISIS. So this was very important to control the speech in the mosque, because then if you allow for free religious speech in the mosque, the Qataris and the Saudis will come and they will finance the mosques and let them preach about this Takfiri ideology, which Al-Qaeda fighters belong to. So under such circumstances in Syria, the vast majority of the Syrians were very moderate Muslims. They were spiritual Muslims. They belonged to Sufi Sunni Islam. Those were like 80%, 70% of the Syrian people. Then we had around 10, 15% Christians. We had
there's that many Christians there?
Yes. They were over 1.5 million, 2 million Christians in Syria. 80% of them have left the country after the war started. So under Assad, it was very diverse, let's say. But then the war imposed on the country emptied the country from its people.
Sorry, so when you were Christian, did you feel like a lot of problems there? Or for the most part, you were treated normal by the people? Or was it, I mean, legally you had the same rights, but were you treated pretty good by the other Muslims for the most part?
Yeah, I mean, I never faced any persecution or, let's say, prejudice because I was a Christian. In the contrary, we had a really good coexistence in Syria, which means, like, during Ramadan, I remember I was a student in the university, like, I used to fast with my friends, and then we break the fasting together. It's totally normal,
out of respect, So if I'm hanging out with my Muslim friends, I'll usually fast with them because I don't feel right, like, eating when they're fasting. Yes. It's like, it's a basic respect for each other, so that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, like if you want to drink a water, it doesn't take much of an energy to go to the next room and drink a water, you don't have to
it's disrespect not to do stuff around them. So you respected them, they respected you, basically.
Exactly, but in front of the law, we were all equal, and there was always this, the people who were radical, let's say, they were afraid of the government, that if they do any sort of prejudice or violence against, let's say, ethnic or religious minorities, they will pay the price for it. So there was this fear of persecution by the government if they become radical. So once they destroyed the government, the army, the president, everything, the state institutions are gone, it has become chaos. And the weapons were all funneled in the hands of the radicals, so they get into power.
Yeah, and those weapons mostly came from America, is what's crazy. And I think Turkey was involved as well. I think a lot of like Americans and Europeans don't understand the concept. Like, I love free speech and I love the society we have, but sometimes we have these tough cultures that aren't America and aren't Europe, and they have to be run a little different. So when we come and do these regime change wars, it's been disaster every time. So what happens, all this sectarian violence breaks out, with all these groups get radicalized. People need to realize sometimes these crazy groups need to be dealt with harshly. And I'm not, I don't know the details of how bad or good Assad was. I'm not justifying anything bad or killings he did, but these are complex, situations. And most of my Syrian friends, they were more pro-Assad. They said he was better for the country. Syria looked beautiful. I really wanted to go visit. I mean, here's one of the most people, have traveled to the Middle East. People are always so friendly and nice. And I hear Syria was great, but unfortunately, that's probably not going to happen for a while.
No, we could have fed you to death, believe me. If you came to Syria and if you don't eat our food till we say stop, then you're not a good host. So our hospitality was forcing people to eat.
Yeah, right. No, I know you're not Muslim, but as a whole, other Muslim countries have great hospitality. I'm glad to hear that
Yes.
you were treated great as a Christian, because obviously I've been to all those countries, but the countries I've been to have treated me great. Like hospitality is a big part of the culture. I'm sure even though you're Christian, Syrian, you probably grew up with the hospitality being a major part of your culture.
Yeah, I mean, Christianity. Syria was a Christian country. Like the Islamization of Syria happened, I think, 13 centuries ago or so, more or less. So it's not like Syria was always a Muslim country, and passed through this Jesus Christ walked in Damascus. So it's a very you will find a lot of Christian fingerprints when you go to Syria. The churches that you go to in Syria, you will not find it anywhere in the world. It's like very old, ancient churches, goes back over 1,000 years. And in these regions, when you go and you see how the people are practicing their, let's say, Christian rituals, I myself, I'm from Aleppo, for example. It's not like we didn't have all these old churches, but when I go to the ancient towns and cities in Syria and I see how the people are praying in Aramaic, you feel like we're living in the first year after Christianity. It's like it's 2,000 years back at time. So for me, it was never faced any problems for being a Christian in the country. So now, this is the very serious case. Like, people are getting killed for, like, you were born a Christian.
The videos online are just absolutely terrible. Sorry to cut you off, but these videos online of Christians and Muslims being massacred, it's just, that's why I contacted the interview. I see these videos and they're hard to watch. It's just like, it's just terrible. Like they're doing this, like they're torturing them, this awful things, just mutilating people. Because it's not just Christians. It's a lot of people don't realize it's a very complex thing between Sunni and Shiite Muslims, where there's this battle going on, and it's that's the whole battle in the Middle East between the Sunnis and the Shiites, and that's the complex order, which really is which was it? It was was it Shiites that ran?
The Alawites, they are a small domination in Islam. They are, let's say, the Shiites are the second main sect after Sunnis. Sunnis are the majority in the world. And then comes the Shiites, and then comes the Alawites. Alawites are still smaller domination in Islam. They believe in the Quran, they believe in the Prophet Muhammad, and they also believe a lot about the teachings of the fourth caliph. His name is Ali bin Abi Talib, and he was an amazing philosopher. If you read about his teachings back then, you would be amazed how smart this person was, like in terms of his willingness to establish justice and really guiding people into doing good over evil. So he was a really good person, and they also believe in him. They believe in different Greek philosophies, for example, in their religion, and they're very modern. And they don't like enforce their women to wear hijab or practice the religion against their will. And Bashar, he was an Alawite. His wife was Sunni. He was an Alawite, but both were more modern, right? The people who wanted to remove him, I mean, if you turn on your TV, they would tell you, like, those are the Democrats, those are the progressives fighting against Assad. But the truth of the matter is, Assad was more progressive than the people who fought him. And they fought him because he was progressive, more progressive than them. They wanted to bring the country back into more, let's say, conservative Islamic style. Like when Assad allowed casinos, for example, to open in the country, they made a big issue for him. Like the closed communities in Syria, they lobbied big time against it. Gambling is haram, and I understand it, but Syria shouldn't be one colored. Like if you don't want to go to the casino, you don't go to the casino, right? And nobody forces you to go to a club, for example. But some people do. So I like the diversity in Syria. Like you can leave, or you used to leave from you cover yourself completely. I can't even see your eyes, basically.
Yeah.
Or you walk in a miniskirt, right? Both
Yeah, you're
were,
allowed to do whatever you want. Yeah,
yeah.
that's freedom. You know, you could be, if you want to cover up, cover up. If you don't. That seems pretty fair. Some people get mad when women are covered up, but it's like, okay, that's freedom. That's that's their right to cover up as well. You know, I prefer women not, but but in a free country they can cover up if they want.
Yes, and myself, to be honest, like when you see a covered woman, why should I be bothered if she's okay with it? I don't like it. I don't want my woman or my children to cover themselves like that. I like modesty, but that's beyond modesty for me. You know, like it's,
Yeah.
why can't I see your eyes? I need to communicate with a human person. This is in my conviction, but who am I to come and force this person to remove it? But at the same time, now in Syria, people are not allowed to have this freedom any longer. So if this was about freedom, about democracy, people should have the choice, right? And I myself, I'm a political activist nowadays, and I'm an analyst, for example. And they know me in Syria. All these Jolani people know me. Like, if I go to Syria...
They'd probably kill you if you went there, correct?
Yeah, like they would hold me from the airport. They would not allow me to the country. I would not see the sunlight again in my life. So this is because of my political work. Now, let's suppose they were tolerant and they said, this time we allow you, come in. And then if on a checkpoint, one of these Al-Qaeda terrorists see that I'm a Christian, I mean, my name also indicates I'm an Armenian, they would kill me again. So the chances are very, very high that you could get killed just for having a faith in God or in Jesus Christ, for example, in this case. And it's not like I'm a daily practicer of Christianity, but my culture and my upbringing is Christian. I was born in a Christian Orthodox faith, and also I was told since I am a child, because my grandparents survived the Armenian Genocide, that we have to keep our faith in God, and otherwise our community completely disappears from the existence. It's one of the major components of the Armenian identity, because Armenia is the first Christian nation in history. So we preserve that, and we want for the Christians and for the Armenians to preserve their faith in Syria. But now it is very, very difficult for the people to practice or to express their opinions.
Yeah, how bad are the massacres of the Christians right now? It's hard to tell from videos. You know, it looks horrendous in the videos I see, but you never know, is that a couple cases, or is it happening all over the country, or it's hard to know not being there?
Actually, the vast majority of the victims are Alawites.
That's what everyone's trying to say. It's not just Christians. I know that's what everyone's saying online, but it's some Christians, but it's lots of Muslims. A lot of those videos, I guess, are falsely titled. It's like a different sect of Muslims being killed.
Yes. So the Alawites are being mass murdered because president of the country in the past, Assad, was an Alawite. So they're taking revenge from the people. It's like... have all these people benefited from the Assad regime? Those are poor people. They're farmers. They're going from farm to farm and killing people. I watched the video today, Jake, and this shook me to the core, because
it's hard watching these videos. Yeah.
And this one is in particular, they are recording death bodies. There are 3 men laid on the ground, and they're stepping over them after they killed them. And then an old woman, probably 65, 70-year-old woman, she looks very tired, and she comes and she says, "May God curse you for what you did to my sons." And when I investigated the case, they killed 2 of her sons and 1 of her grandsons in this operation. And they are stepping over these bodies, and they're saying, like, "We killed your pigs." In this video, imagine the pain and the suffering in the eyes of this woman.
It's just so evil.
Just put yourself in the shoes of this woman who lost all her family right now to these terrorists. And we learned today that those were everything that she had. She had these 2 sons and the grandson. Her husband is dead. And her house was destroyed due to the earthquake last year. They're from the poorest of the poor of Syria, and they're coming door to door and killing every man that comes in front of them. And this reminds me of the massacres that the Ottomans have committed against my grandparents 110 years ago. When my grandparents used to tell me about these stories, how the Ottoman Empire soldiers used to go from one house to house and take all the men and kill them in the streets, it was a story in my back brain, you know, we heard about it, but we couldn't visualize it. Yeah, now you see it televised.
Yeah, no, it's hard to believe this like evil could still exist until you've seen it. Both, you know, like what happened to Palestine last year, and now seeing this in Syria, it's just sickening. And it's like especially that America helped this, and that we fund Israel and that we help fund this. It's just, it's hard watching this without losing faith in my country. Methylene blue has been used for over 100 years for medical purposes and recently surged back into popularity. It has been shown to help repair brain tissue and improve memory, cognitive function, energy, and mood. Research suggests that methylene blue could have neuroprotective effects, possibly aiding in conditions like Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, and depression. Go to MerakiMedicinal.com and use the promo code FIGHTBACK for a discount.
Jake, my friend, look, in Syria, in 2009, 2010, if you came to Syria and you walked in the streets of Damascus, you would have seen many, many American tourists in the country, people speaking English in the streets. We had over 7 million tourists in Syria just before the war, the year before the war. It was a safe, stable country, thriving. It has a very functioning, good economy. And education was free for everyone. Healthcare was free for everyone. We had lots of good things. I'm still reiterating that political freedoms are essential. Look, I'm able now to speak with you because of freedom of speech and freedom of political practice. And that was absent. But the people were not getting killed door to door because of their faith or because they were born in a different ethnicity. So this is a completely different case. There is the intent of committing genocide against a religious minority in this case.
Sickening. Couldn't imagine getting pulled out and murdered in front of your wife and children, happen to watch, and, who knows what they'll do to them. It's just, it's absolutely sickening to watch. Like, I've seen those videos and I was shook. That's why I contacted you. I said, let's do an interview, try to understand what's happening there. From an outsider, it seems like a lot of the conflict is really, the Sunnis versus the other people. And it looks like, let's have it back. I think it appears like the Sunnis kind of behind the scenes work a lot with Israel to try to overthrow like Iran and some of these other countries. I don't know if I have this right. Could you give me a little more in-depth on that? Or
actually, who are the most influential Sunni countries? Saudi Arabia, Egypt, UAE, Qatar, and they all have the money, and they can influence through the media, through the NGOs, through the influences that they have. The TV outlets that in the Arab world is just like in the US. It's not like we have various of sources. No, they're centralized in the hands of few. And the Qataris, the Saudis have most of the money, and they're funneling billions per year for these media apparatuses in order to bring the Sunnis against the Shiites. And it's like always this sectarian war and sectarian conflict in the region happens because of the ideology that comes from Saudi Arabia and Qatar and the money that comes from them. And this has been proven by so many incidences. Like in Afghanistan in the late 70s, early 80s, it was the Saudi intelligence in cooperation with the CIA that they have established these Taliban and Al-Qaeda forces there. But the main ideological driving force behind it was coming from Saudi Arabia. And the money was coming from Saudi Arabia. They put all this money to bring all the brainless people from all around the world and send them to Afghanistan. And they did the same thing in Syria. We had over 100,000 different nationalities in the country fighting against Assad in the past 14 years. All are from all around the world. So these sectarian tensions that happens in the region, it just directs all the, let's say, anger of the people against, like Shiites against Sunnis, Sunnis against Shiites. Meanwhile, Israel is advancing everywhere.
Yeah, they want this war. They want the Middle East at war with each other, so they can't focus on them as they slowly massacre the Palestinians, kick them out, and I mean, likely they'll probably try taking more land in Syria like they are in Lebanon. I mean, what's your take on that? You think Israel's going to try stealing some of that land?
I mean, the Israeli officials say that their borders start in the Nile and it stretches to the Euphrates. It's like, I'm not even bringing a conspiracy theory. Maybe a few years ago, they would have called you an anti-Semite if you say this. But now,
they'll still call you that.
But I'm just quoting Smotrich, okay? Smotrich says, he's in the government, right? He says that they will occupy Damascus, which means they will wage a military operation. And their vision is the following at the current moment. Assad was gone. Syria was a major threat for Israel. Once he fled, they destroyed all the strategic weapons of Syria, air defenses, tanks, artilleries, ports, and all the airplanes, right? So Jolani came with pickup trucks. He came with some BMPs probably, but he doesn't have any major force to counter Israel. And Israel went inside Syria. They occupied the highest hill that overlooks all of Syria, Lebanon, Palestine, Israel, etc. And they occupied the water resources in the south. And Netanyahu declared that they will establish 60-kilometer deep demilitarized zone, and that Jolani's forces cannot come to the south of Damascus, which means technically Israel's borders stretch to Damascus. And this is the pre-phase before Israel occupies Damascus. And look, Israeli forces only in 1982, they were rolling in Beirut, in Lebanon. It's not like this is something strange that it never happens, like, oh my God, you're saying something crazy. No, they were walking and drinking beer in Beirut only a few decades ago, and they had to withdraw because of the armed struggle against them. But in Damascus, I suspect that the Israelis will first establish this buffer zone, and then they will come and say, Jolani's forces are posing a threat against the newly annexed territories inside Syria, which is now belonging to us, the Israelis, and we have to occupy Damascus to neutralize this threat. I don't rule out that possibility that Israel may advance and occupy Damascus as well.
Yeah, people that don't know should look up the Greater Israel project. That's a plan of all that land, they're saying. And people are always like, oh, why won't anyone else take the Palestinians? It's because they know once the Palestinians are all kicked out, they're going to start taking more land. And back to, saying Lebanon, I have a friend who's Lebanese. He said, they came in, they invaded his home. They went into his home. They broke all the dishes. They shit all over the house, destroyed things, cut up the furniture, just to destroy his home, just for no reason, just utter disrespect when they invaded Lebanon. Just stuff like that you hear, and it's like these people, like no humanity.
Jake, in Syria, we had a big Jewish community, and I had a Jewish friend who was born in the US. And 1 year before Assad fell, he contacted me and he said he's in Damascus and he feels so happy in Syria. Like he feels like this is his root, And he asked me if I can help him through my contacts to reopen one of the religious sites of the Jews back then, because they left in the 90s. I will tell you the story later. And I said, of course, I have lots of contacts there. So I did my contacts, and we brought him the keys. And he went inside. He was rich, and he renovated it, he cleaned it, and he started practicing again his religion, and he wanted to continue living in Damascus. I asked him once, I said, do you feel safe in Damascus? I said, I feel safer in Damascus than in Israel. Like, he sent me a photo with his kippah in Damascus.
Yeah, I think this is important, though, because it's like people always think everyone hates Jews and say it's a Jew hatred and that. And it's a hatred towards Israel. It doesn't mean we hate Jews. And the fact that he could go in Syria, which basically at war with Israel, and he treated people good, they would treat him good in return. I think that's how most humanity works. If we treat people with respect, they're going to treat you with respect back. I'm constantly called a Jew hater and this and that. And it's like, no, I don't like seeing what Israel's doing over there. Also in America, they've hijacked our government. I don't know if it's the same in Germany, but they've completely hijacked our government over here. And I hate that. People want to turn that into you hate Jews. And it's very deliberate. Like, these guys, these rich Jewish billionaires are smart. They want to create this anti-Semitism and false anti-Semitism as ways to get Jews to rally behind, to be like, oh, everyone hates you. But it's all bullshit if you can look through it.
I think the issue of creating anti-Jewish sentiments is a real thing, and I noticed it after the Gaza onslaught. For example, when you follow the Rabbi Shmuley, what he posts right on X, like I truly believe that he's provoking the people on purpose.
It's hard not to hate Jews when you see that guy. It's like you look at him. I said the same thing. It's like,
but he's doing it on
trying to
purpose.
Cause this.
Yeah, he is doing it on purpose because the Zionist movement, they thrive on the negative sentiments because everybody hates us, right? Mm-hmm. And we like in Syria, if you walk as a Jew with a kippah, nobody cares what you're wearing. If you're wearing a cross or you're wearing, like, it's you, between you and God, But if I'm just saying, somebody came in my house and he's a Christian, not even a Jew, right? Christian, and said, like, okay, now in the New Testament they say that this home is mine. Like, it's like I'm not going to give him my home. I'm going to fight back. So this is the issue is political, with Israel. It's not about religion, but they make it about religion because the Jews were throughout history were persecuted, so people feel empathy, right? And this is what they focus on completely also in the media apparatus. But I myself, like when I meet people, for example, here in Germany, because they don't know my upbringing, or they think Syria was some savage place. We're all, eating each other every day. So somebody like we meet, like I walk my dog, for example, right? And somebody came and we met. And he turned out to be a Jewish person from Ukraine. But he was so concerned to tell me that he's a Jew from Ukraine, and I had to tell him, like, why you're concerned? Like,
I get that sometimes too. Like, Jews, like, bro, I don't dislike Jews. I have lots of Jewish friends, and it's unfortunate some people feel that way, and I could understand, but no, I think it's deliberate. They want to drive the divide, and I could see why people would think that. But some of the best voices against this are guys like Dave Smith, Norm, is it Finkelstein? Some of the best voices speaking against what's happening are Jewish. So it's not hatred towards Jews. I wish more Jews would speak out against it, because unfortunately too many do defend Israel, but it's certainly not all Jews.
Actually, if Dave Smith is watching this, he's based on this case. He was correct on Syria all the way. Yep. And it's impressive how, Syria is really, really complicated, but it's impressive how he learned about Syria and what's happening, and he connected it with other conflicts. So kudos for all the people in the US, speaking out up against this war machine, because Jake, we have paid a lot, like 100 years ago, you come to a new place after massacres and you start a new life and new roots and everything. And then 100 years later, you get displaced again. It's not funny, like to be displaced all the time from one place to another, becoming refugee here and there. Like, nobody wants to become a refugee. Before 2011, nobody heard of a Syrian refugee name, like we were coming to Europe or the US to study or work, etc. But now people are desperate. The people want a new life, and the people ask, like, look, I myself, I'm not right, I'm not left. I agree with the right when they're right, and I agree with the left when they're
exactly
right.
Exactly how I am. If you agree with a party with everything, you're not an independent thinker. You should go both ways. If you agree with the party on everything, maybe you're the one in a million by chance, but it means you're probably not thinking for yourself. You're just spouting and following whatever your leader's saying.
Exactly. And I agree with the American right on many things, for example. But when it comes to, like, why do you guys hate us? Why do you come to us? And I'm like, it's really mind-boggling. Like, is it really that difficult to understand why the people are coming to the West? Because the West has most of the money. And the opportunities are here. And people looking for opportunities, yes, running from a war. And they could go, let's say, from Syria to Lebanon. But do you think he will thrive in Lebanon? Or he will thrive in Jordan? No. So he will go to a place where he can at least restart a life. But now I have to draw a distinction, of course. There are people looking for opportunities, but those who are doing troubles, I will be with you, with the right, to ask for their deportation, because they tarnish my reputation as a Syrian before anything else. And I don't want this type of people also to come in Western countries if they participated in the destruction of my country, for example, right? And that's why I was called far right many times. Today I received so much backlash because of that. But if you support Al-Qaeda and you sit in Europe or in the US, probably you should go back and live in Syria, right? Under Jordan.
Makes sense. No, for me, like, I'm not against immigration. Well, first off, I totally understand why people want to immigrate to America and these countries. So I would never blame the immigrants. My thing is, it's just flooded in too quick. It needs to be vetted, done slow. But the problem is, like you said, we're often destroying these countries, and then people are flooding in. So it's like we're going to destroy a country and then complain about it. It's like it gets complicated, and you could understand why people want to come to these countries. The thing is, though, we had our borders, they were just flowing in millions of years unchecked, millions a year unchecked. That's when it becomes a problem. It's a very complex issue. And this is off subject, but something really interesting happening here now. They're taking green card holders, which are basically residents, and if they're protesting against Israel, pro-Palestine, then they're saying they're a Hamas supporter when they're not saying they support Hamas, and they're revoking their green cards and visas. That's, to me, really alarming. Our First Amendment allows free speech, all speech, but just shows our politicians. These same guys can burn an American flag, but if they burn an Israeli flag, they'll be deported. So it's who's really controlling America?
I will ask you a question. Many of the pro-Palestine demonstrations in the U.S. in the past, of course, rightfully so. I was also demonstrating here many times. However, it was completely hijacked by the left, right?
Yeah.
And it seems that many of these Soros organizations were also encouraging people to go. It's like they
Yeah.
gave the, like as if they were asking people to go for demonstrations so that Trump comes and capitalize on it and ban the people to speak against Israel. And people have all the right to go to demonstrations. But on an organizational level, I'm saying there were many of these groups were
Yes.
affiliated with this.
I very much
left wing.
agree. They've taken these worst groups, and then so it makes it when conservatives they see these worst groups supporting Palestine, it makes them be like, oh, these are probably the bad guys. But this is the one situation where they're actually the good guys, or it's not as complex as good versus bad. But this is the thing where they're right. But it's the same groups that they had. We had these like riots, Black Lives Matter riots, where I think 20, 30 people died, cities were burnt down. It's like the same people being free Palestine. So it makes normal people be like, oh, I don't want anything to do with these guys. And some of the protesters, can be idiots. But these same protesters, they took over streets, college campuses for BLM. Nothing happened. As soon as they were protesting Israel, the cops came in, arrested them, flooded out. They're getting expelled from colleges, deported. So it kind of shows you can hate white people in America, but if you say anything about Israel, you're deported, arrested. It's been very clear to a lot of people, I think, who controls America. Even in Germany, where you're at, you can't become a citizen unless you say Israel has a right to exist. There's aspects of Jewish history that we discussed that you'd be arrested. We can't have certain discussions, If you were to say, 3 million, not 6 million people died in the Holocaust, you'd be thrown in jail. So you don't really have free speech over there either.
Actually, Germany has a lot of limitations for speech, and I myself, I'm not an expert in history or the German history, and I'm not interested to dig in much. So I'm not asking questions, I'm not challenging.
I think you should have the right to do that, is all I'm saying.
Yeah, but simply criticizing the crimes of a state which is governed by humans, basically, like they're individuals taking decisions to kill Palestinians, right? So you are basically criticizing Netanyahu, Smotrich, etc. Before that, Ariel Sharon. Like there were so many, let's say, officials came in Israel. They themselves confess that they have committed war crimes. So criticizing these people doesn't mean criticizing the faith of Judaism. But nowadays it's difficult. Like in Germany, even the protesters, right? Like you're going protesting against Israel, etc. And you could get lots of backlash. I went to a few demonstrations here. And first of all, I didn't like that it is hijacked by the left completely. And secondly, it is brutality of the police. Like, I don't want to go there with my wife, for example, and beating us up and become like deformed because of a protest. We want to peacefully participate in this. And then you could lose your job. You could lose your, like, there are so many things that could happen. I could be deported from Germany.
Yeah,
so,
and if you get deported, you're going to get killed.
Yeah, like these things happen. So I'm very careful even with my words when I do you have to, like, I do 1 hour podcast conversation, sometimes solo, explaining things. And I have to be careful. Like the other day, I watched the report. Elon Musk amplified it. Then I saw it. It is on the 90-minute or something, and they're talking to judges, German judges, about free speech crimes. And it turned out it's worse than I thought. Like if you say something online on X, for example, and they could incriminate you, your punishment could be more than if you said the same thing while you're protesting, because they say in the protest, you could say something and it disappears. But if you say it online, it stays online, so the crime is even bigger. I was like, oh my God, so I have to really be careful.
No, it's crazy. I see people getting more prison time in England for like tweets versus actual rapists. That's just pure insanity. And like I said, I don't know exactly how it is in Germany, but I do know there's certain things that you'll get thrown in jail for talking about. And I think, no historical event should be off limits, in my opinion, whether right or wrong. You can't really find the truth if you're not allowed to dig and ask questions. Doesn't mean you're hatred, but it's just I should be able to ask, hey, how many how do you know the amount of people, Armenians, that died? These are very valid.
I mean, this is something.
questions.
This is something I received lots of, for example, pushback by Turkish scholars or Turkish activists, let's say, right? So when I write and I say 1.5 million Armenians perished during the Armenian genocide, and this is the consensus, right? And then they come some Turkish people, for example, they say, no, that's not the number. 300,000 died. It was a war. Tragic things happened, and I'm truly open for discussion because I want to also know how many Armenians died, right?
We should want to know the truth. That's the only way to get to the answer. You have to be able to go back and forth, Like I haven't really studied the Armenian genocide, so I have no opinion on it, but I would like, for me to do, I have to listen to people argue both sides. If you can't listen to both sides, you're not going to know the truth. To me, that's pure madness.
And the term genocide, it's not about a number. the number is comes secondary. Of course, it's a big difference if it is 1.5 million or 350,000. Of course, huge difference.
Yeah, huge
However,
difference,
when there is
but
the
it's
intent,
still awful.
yeah, if the intent is there to destroy a people in part or in whole based on their ethnic or religious affiliation, then it is a genocide, because you are killing, even if you killed one person with the intent of killing all Armenians, let's say, then the intent is there. And we have countless statements from Ottoman leaders and ambassadors in the Ottoman side, photos, documents, like newspapers were talking about it back then, that the international community, of course, back then, they had to intervene and to stop the massacres. And freelance journalists came to capture the photos of the genocide. Now, if it is 350,000, I'm not going to be sad about it. In the contrary, I should be happy.
You'd be happy, yeah. You should be thrilled if it turns out it's less.
Exactly, less Armenians died.
Yeah, no, that would be a good thing, not a bad thing. I think it was the ADL spent years petitioning for it not to be considered a genocide. So like they wanted only the Holocaust to be considered a genocide. So they made it so you can't call the Armenian genocide a genocide. They eventually lost that battle, but that's kind of wild.
And Israel doesn't recognize the Armenian genocide.
No.
Like, this is very unfortunate, you know. And in Armenia, it is a debate why Israel doesn't recognize it, and the Armenians recognize the Holocaust, right? And at the same time, Israel played also other dirty games in this case. For example, in 2020, Azerbaijan attacked an independent enclave called Karabakh. It belonged to the Armenians. And in 2023, managed to ethnically cleanse 120,000 Armenians, push them all away from that enclave. And 60% of the weapons that Azerbaijan used came from Israel. Israel opened an open air corridor between Tel Aviv and Baku, sending them all sorts of weapons, drones, and missiles, and tanks and everything, so that they advance and they kick out the Armenians from this enclave. And another ironic thing, because we were speaking now about what happened in Syria, Erdogan brought thousands of these terrorists from Syria and sent them to Azerbaijan in order for them to fight against the Armenians in this enclave. It's like a complete alliance of different countries against the Armenians, and they have lost the battle, of course, partly because they have a clown prime minister in Armenia who has no clue about military affairs or geopolitics. But all in all, it's a big tragedy that Armenians lost a big chunk of territory, which they had a long history and monasteries and churches and everything there, and it's all gone. And so you see, like, I watch many podcasts, like including yourself, and you guys also speak about why nobody speaks about the persecution of the Christians. And this is a good question. In the past, I always thought, like, oh, one day the Vatican is going to say something. It's impossible, you know, all these Christians are dying in my country. He will come and say something, you know. And then a few years later, he comes, like, he has a pigeon in his hand, and he's like, I'm praying for the Syrian people, you know. Like, this is not how you can, guys, save the Christians in the Middle East. Like, if the governments want for the Christians not to be slaughtered and stay the way they are, which is the birthplace of Jesus Christ, and this is where Christianity started. It didn't start in Washington, it didn't start in Minnesota, it started from Palestine. So if you guys want for the Christians to live in peace and harmony, they shouldn't intervene in the internal affairs and do all these regime change wars and coup d'etats and destabilizing the countries for geopolitical reasons, because we are the weakest element and we are the minority. And once you support these radicals, we will be stepped on, like it's happening now in
it's happening
Syria.
Currently to today. You know, we're supplying the most radical ones. To me, this war has been going on for a long time, and it seemed like just overnight it just like happened. Like, how did that happen? Or what appeared to be so quick? There was no help from Iran, from Russia. Do you understand like how that happened so quickly with Assad having to flee?
So I was a few weeks before the regime change in Syria, and I think the situation was very, very dire, and the people were very in a very poor conditions, because So we criticized Obama for what he did to Syria, but I want to criticize also Trump. When he came, he was saying the right things. He said, why are we supporting these rebels? They want to fly planes in our buildings, and those are terrorists, this and that. But when he came and he wanted to withdraw from Syria, the intelligence community went against him, the CIA went against him, the Pentagon and the neocons and Israel and everyone went against him. They didn't want him to withdraw from Syria. In the contrary, they orchestrated chemical attacks in Syria 2 times, in 2017 and 2018, so that he stays in Syria. And
These
so
were staged, right? Those chemical attacks were like staged, or most likely were staged, it appeared from what I read.
In 2017, the chemical attack happened in a city called Khan al-Assal and Khan Sheikhun, sorry. And in this place, the researchers of MIT, they have found out that this missile came from a rebel side and not from a government side. And the same thing in 2018. In 2018, it was highly likely that a chemical attack never happened. It was not the case at all. But despite that, Trump bombed Syria twice. He called Assad animal. He said he will assassinate Assad. And then the most important part, you know, there are some things for Trump, it's a theater. He wants to show like he has muscles. He's bombing, doing this and that, talk, big talk. We know his style. But he really harmed Syria by imposing draconian sanctions on the Syrian economy, which means, Jake,
I was unaware of that.
So he imposed sanctions called the Syrian People Protection Act. So it's like the opposite of what they did, basically. They imposed draconian sanctions on the Syrian central bank. They imposed sanctions on the transactions. They imposed sanctions on the energy sector, on the pharmaceutical sector, on everything that is that can people services, right? So let's suppose, for God forbidden, one of my family members had cancer, and I want to import the medicine. I can't make transactions. I can't buy the medication. So people buy it from Dubai, put it in a refrigerator, bring it to Beirut, and then you put it in a taxi and you bring it to Syria because you can't buy. So that's how far Trump went in sanctioning Syria, to the extent that 95% of the Syrian people became under the poverty line under Trump. And then he occupied the oil fields of Syria and the wheat fields of Syria. So we basically occupied our energy and
America
food baskets.
did? We occupied the oil fields?
Yes.
What were we doing with the oil? Probably selling it to Israel for cheap, or I don't think U.S. got any of it.
They were selling it to finance a proxy force that they have created there called the Syrian Democratic Forces.
So we took the oil fields and we were financing the war with this. Wow, that's crazy.
Yeah,
I did not know that.
And we needed this oil because everything in Syria works on fuel and gas, like from cars, from our cooking, and from our electricity. So imagine we had 2 hours of electricity per day because we don't have our oil. And our cars, you have a car, but you don't have fuel. How can you drive your car?
So people couldn't even get to work and functions. And
how would the factories work? How would the factories work? Nothing works without fuel.
And Trump's the one that put these sanctions on?
Yeah, so he helped these so-called rebels, these terrorists, by impoverishing the Syrian people who live under the government regions, who were the majority, 15 million. And then the organizations like USAID, NED, and other organizations, they have funneled billions of US taxpayer money into the regions occupied by these Al-Qaeda forces, saying this is humanitarian aid, we're building tents, we're giving blankets, we're giving food. Yes, they were partly doing that, but some of this money was also going to the pockets of these terrorists. And this has been proven now because of the Doge, and they're coming after USAID and everything, that there was a non-governmental organization in Idlib where Jolani used to occupy. The guy received the money from USAID, and he says he's a humanitarian organization building tents and giving blankets to kids and children. He was buying, but some of this money he was sending to the commanders and officers of Al-Qaeda. Around $9 million went to the pockets of these Al-Qaeda terrorist leaders. So on one hand, they destroyed the economy of Assad, let's say. On the other hand, they propped up the economy of Jolani. So the people who lived under these terrorist regions, they probably had a better life than the people lived the majority under Assad. So the people were very poor. They were demoralized. They didn't have the will to fight any longer. Like, why would I fight 14 years if the situation is going to be this dire, right? So when the attack happened on Aleppo, the army didn't fight. The Syrian army rejected to fight, in addition to other things like probably they have bought some of the officers in the army and bribed them.
Yeah, because it's crazy to see them not fight back. Yeah, I bet there was some bribery. Like you said, you made excellent points, but there had to be some bribery and stuff as well, or something. Maybe they're promised some positions of power, or what do you think is happening to the army now? Are they being persecuted, or are they being treated well since they didn't fight back?
Yeah, so look, it doesn't make any sense for the regime to fall in 14 days. This is not. This
No, it
is
just
not
happened out of
something.
nowhere. This has been going on for
Yeah,
years, and
like
I was shocked to
14
see it happen.
years. 14 years they couldn't oust Assad. Like in 14 days, it's impossible. And I covered these attacks from Jolani army against the Syrian army, and yes, they were caught off guard in Aleppo, and they had to do strategic deployment in a different place. And in this place, they had over 40 to 50,000 soldiers. It's impossible for them to lose the battle in a matter of day or two. But they all laid down their arms. There was someone giving instructions and orders to the military to lay down arms. So, and you're
Someone
a soldier.
someone high up in the military, most likely, it seems like.
Yes. So if you're in the military in Syria, you follow the orders. You don't.
That's how the U.S. military is. So, yeah, they must have
Yeah.
corrupted someone high up and had them lay down orders. I mean, I'm just speculating, but that's what it sounds like.
Yeah, it sounded like it was a coup and wasn't like a regime change operation. Like it wasn't like an insurgency. There was no fighting.
No, that's what was so baffling to me. That it just seems like it
Yeah.
happened so quick. And then Assad fled to Russia. Or we
That's
don't
the
really
most
know.
absurd part. No, he's in Russia with his family. And this is the point where everything also changed for me, because people used to call me an Assadist. I was never a loyalist, you know. I'm not loyal to people.
Yeah, you just
I'm
said
loyal
you're
to
better than
cause.
better than the other option.
Yeah, I'm a person of principle. I'm like, if Assad is doing something right, I support that something right. But when he's doing something wrong, I reject that, right?
Yep.
Like in the economy or in the authoritarianism, I'm not with him. But when it comes to foreign policy and fighting against these insurgents, it's not like I have the privilege to choose the actors. It's like it's either Assad or Al Qaeda, and I'm not going to be with Al Qaeda. You know, it's logic. But when he left the country the way he left, I don't want to say I was disappointed, but I said he betrayed the country, because you cannot leave everything behind you like this before securing at least the fate and the destiny of the people. You need to secure your army, because this army has been built for 50 years from our taxpayer money. And Israel came when there is no president and destroys the entire country, and basically Syria becomes castrated, and now we don't have any sovereignty, any deterrence weapon against anyone, and so every army can come and occupy our country. No, you needed to secure the destiny of the people, of the army. So then you leave. It's fine. If you don't want to continue this, leave. But you cannot leave us in the forefront against these Al-Qaeda hordes who are now committing all this genocide against the religious minorities, because they saw you an Alawite, you're an Alawite, Bashar al-Assad, so we will kill your people. Now, all these people who were murdered in the coastal cities of Syria, whose fault is this?
Yeah, I mean, he should have sent his wife and kids out, but then he should have stayed and either died or at least try fighting. You know, if you're a leader, you got to go down with your people. You can't abandon your people. I know that's a tough reality, because he's probably going to torture them if they catch him, but he could always shoot himself last minute if it's going down. I think if you're a leader of a country, you have to stay and fight with your people and lead and at least try to lead, even if you're going to lose. You can't just abandon your people.
500,000 people died in the discourse of this regime change. Let it be 500,001, no problem. And you be the last one. Because
yeah, you got to go down with your people. I agree. You know, if you're the leader of the country, it's your job. You know, hopefully, and him staying, he could have rallied the people to pick up their weapons and start fighting. You know, if like, Assad's coming out with us to fight, it's like he could have rallied them and got people like, no, we're fighting, get your weapons, and rallied it, and at least it died like a man if he hadn't won.
I mean, 1/3 of the casualties in Syria are from the Syrian armed forces, so his military. And so you have around 180,000 soldiers got killed fighting for the country and for him, right? So he stays in power. And then you have 3 times more injured people, disabled people, because of this war. And if every of these killed and injured, disabled Syrian soldiers have only 3 or 4 family members, we have over 2 million people now affected by this war, right? And they used to receive government subsidies because they lost their son and nobody can work any longer, or they lost their father, and so the government used to support them. Now that he left, everybody stays like orphan. The government rejects to support them, Jolani, because they belong to the Syrian army families. They kicked the families of the former Syrian army soldiers from the public sector completely. So you have millions of people now starving without jobs in the country because of a punishment, collective punishment against them, right? And that's why the former Syrian army soldiers who were in the mountains, they organized themselves and they're starting like a guerrilla warfare against these Nusra terrorists. And this was the challenge that Jolani felt, like the former army officers, if they come together and they attack against us, this is dangerous. So he sent his terrorist army basically going from house to house and killing ordinary civilians instead of fighting against the soldiers who were fighting against him.
Yeah.
Like, have you seen one video from what we saw on X belonging to a soldier carrying an arm? They were all civilians.
No, it's all civilians. Yeah, they're cowardly. They're not taking soldiers. They're taking killing civilians.
Yeah, and they call themselves rebels. Like, what fighting did they do? The entire time they were walking, they walked 500 kilometers from the north to the south of Damascus without fighting. Like, what kind of bravery they think that they have achieved? They did nothing. Brave. They were walking on the highway with convoys. If there was an air force, they could have eliminated 40,000 of them on the and nobody flew fighter jets. It's just mind-boggling.
Why didn't Russia send any help? You have any
so this is the question. This is the question. Assad, when Aleppo fell, he went to Moscow and he met with Putin, and he came back to Damascus telling his people and his advisors that he received an unlimited support from Moscow and that the Russian Air Force will intervene, but that intervention never came. So I don't know if he's telling the truth, or I don't know if he was bluffing to the people, giving them the impression that the Russians will come, will help us, and then all of a sudden he escaped. It's like we were all in shock because we expected a fight, and we don't want to give our country to Al-Qaeda. And it's not like people, when there is an existential threat, if there's somebody coming to kill you, it's the instinct of survival that allows you to fight back. And you cannot tell me that he didn't have a way to encourage the people to fight for him. There was. But he chose to leave. And he went to Moscow, and he's living a lavish life there. And I'm I don't want to go more harsher on him, but whoever I ask in Syria, those who supported him, and they paid a big price. Their sons have gone, their husbands have gone. Everybody is cursing him now because he left his country this way. And what can you tell to these people who paid all this price?
Was there still a fighting chance when he left, or did he leave at the very, very end, or was it still like...
He left when Damascus was falling, because basically he went to Latakia, to the Russian airbase, and he posted a statement saying that the Russian airbase came under a drone attack and he had no choice but to leave. And I don't believe that, because once you go to Latakia, Tartus, Jable, this is the coastal line of Syria, you had millions of people loyal to you. And he knows it. And he comes from that region. He could have mobilized his people again, and he would have said, we lost the rest of the country, and we will stay here, we will defend our Syrian identity, we will defend our whatever left from our Syria, and we will push back. You're the leader. You're the one who has to decide this and take a decision to say, we either fight or we surrender. Okay, if I want to surrender, there is no chance for me to win this. At least I have to secure the fate of these people. So you're friends with Putin, you're friends with Iran. So Iran and Russia should talk to Turkey, Qatar, and other anti-Assad forces in the region so that such massacres don't happen, at least. Like, this is the minimum of the minimum,
They could pressure them not to do massacres, right? Like Turkey and Qatar and stuff could pressure them not to go out and doing what they're doing, but it seems like there's no pressure.
If the governor of Gaziantep, or choose any smaller governorate in Turkey now, picks a phone and calls Jolani, he would stop the massacres. The most junior official in Turkey can now pick up the phone and stop the massacres, but they're not doing it.
Because they really needed Turkey. Turkey really helped a lot, correct? That was kind of the final. I know U.S. originally was helping, but it seems like Turkey was kind of the final front that helped him push it over.
Actually, because the place where Jolani occupied was in northwest Syria, and it was on the borders with Turkey, so they had open borders with Turkey. I mean, if you see the gear the soldiers of Qaeda were wearing, the cars that they were driving, and the uniforms and the guns they were holding, it's quite obvious it's coming from a NATO country. It's from Turkey. So Turkey was the logistical hub and the intelligence hub, which they gave all the support to these Qaeda terrorists. But Qatar was sending the money, the salaries. Like, imagine a soldier in the Syrian army received $30 per month salary, because it has become very poor. The officer receives 50. If you're a general officer, you receive $50. The soldier in Al-Qaeda receives $1,000 per month.
So they're making way more money. So that's people. It was easy to get people because they're paying them a lot better. I'm sure some of this money slipped into the Syrian army. My guess is, I'm speculating, but I guess some of that money slipped into the higher ups to not fight back. That's what it seems like probably happened. No, it's a shame. If the president or your leader steps by you and you're like, hey, we're going to fight, I'm going to go out fighting to the death. But all of a sudden, if everyone's abandoned, everyone's fleeing, it's hard to rally. It's easy for everyone to be like, well, no one's leading us. What are we supposed to do?
Yeah. The thing is this mysterious silence. Like, why don't you come and give a televised speech or tell the people what's happening and you're leaving or staying and what is going to be the future? It's like sitting in the plane and leaving, and now we are 4 months after
he's probably ashamed is why. I mean, he's probably, imagine the shame he must feel, or he should, like you said, leaving. But at least give his side of the story. So do you think if Trump called and tried pressuring Turkey to stop the massacres, there's a good chance that could be done?
Yes, I think so. I think I really hope and I plead to President Trump and his team, especially Tulsi Gabbard, because she knows the situation in Syria.
Actually, I know Tulsi. I could maybe try calling her and see if there's something she could do.
Yeah, Tulsi follows me also on X, and she reported about the atrocities against the minorities, Christians in Syria during the Senate hearing. You heard it. And I hope that she's seeing the reports I'm posting. It's not like I'm saying, please, like we're not begging, but they know the truth. And the U.S. as a superpower has also a moral obligation to stop the killing. Like we're not asking for intervention, no-fly zone. Yeah, we're asking phone call from Trump to President Erdogan and Qatar, and this slaughter will stop tomorrow.
So Tulsi potentially could get in Trump's ear and tell Trump, hey, could you call Qatar and Turkey and they could stop the slaughters?
Yeah, there is a video of Trump circulating now on X from 2017 or so. He says that Qatar is the biggest sponsor of terrorism in the region, and he knows it. And he knows that Qatar is behind this. Giving all this money and giving the media cover via Al Jazeera with its strong influence over the people. So Donald Trump and President Putin, they're having phone calls nowadays, and they're agreeing on at least the minimum things in Ukraine. Stop the killing, right? So stop the killing in Syria should not be the biggest problem if it is about pressing Erdogan and Qatar. Okay, like if they want to teach a lesson to the people, how many they have to kill. Like we spoke about the Armenian genocide, the ratio of the killing was around 400 people per day between the 1880s till 1915. Now they're killing over 450 ratio per day. Like it's even more than the Armenian genocide,
Yeah, even though it's a lot of Muslims, maybe it's good that a lot of Americans are thinking it's mostly Christians, because it's like if they're in there massacring Christians, which they are massacring Christians too, it's like we get some pressure to stop this. It's just, to me, Muslims, Christians matter equally, but to a lot of Americans don't view it that way. It's like, it's just terrible seeing it. So hopefully we can get this some clips and try to get this to Trump and get him to pressure him to stop the massacres. I think all the people want it.
I think if Donald Trump does it, he will gain even credibility for himself, and he will gain lots of respect also among the Syrian people. And in the region, what is our problem with the U.S.? Like, U.S. is 10,000 kilometers away from us, right? Like, we don't wake up in the morning and we're like hating on the U.S. That's not the case at all. We hate the policies which leads into such disasters in our countries. Therefore, he knows that this war was started by Obama. And Obama is one of his, they're not in good terms, basically, that much. He started this war. He financed all these terrorists in the country. Hillary Clinton did it. And Joe Biden continued it until the last day. They did this regime change before he left the country. So he can...
That's right. It was right before Trump came in. That's right.
Yes.
And Trump's publicly spoken against it a lot. So hopefully he'll come in and at least try to stop the massacres.
Yeah, I think he should at least follow America First policy in this case. And I know that he also has other calculations with Israel and the influence of Israel, and that Israel may benefit from, the destabilization of Syria. But there are thousands of people dying in a worthless war. It's not like doing any difference for Al-Qaeda or changing equations. It's just a free spree of killing, Like, it's not like there is fighting between two sides and people are dying in the middle. No. It's a pure evil, and he knows well that he can stop it. Therefore, Donald Trump, Putin, they can cooperate with Greece, they can cooperate with Cyprus. All these countries are horrified. Imagine this is happening in their neighborhood, and Turkey is supporting it. What if Turkey supports something similar against Greece or against Cyprus? Everybody is alarmed in the region, and Greece is part of NATO, and Turkey is part of NATO as well.
Yeah, that's crazy. They're part of NATO and they're allowing this. That's why, there's things I like about Trump and don't like about Trump. But if he could put some pressure to do this, that'd be a huge win, and it would be popular with everyone. There's no one that wouldn't say it's not a good thing to not stop massacring people.
And there is no one. And there is no one in the world who likes getting credits and praises than Donald Trump. I think that would be...
That's true. So has Giuliani attacked Israel at all? I believe that's a no, correct?
Giuliani was asked what is he going to do about the occupation of Syrian land. Israel occupied more than the size of Gaza Strip in Syria after the fall of Assad. And they couldn't occupy Gaza entirely in more than 1 year, but they did it in a matter of 2 weeks in Syria. And when he was asked what is he going to do about it, he said he cannot disclose his plans to the press.
It's weird watching all these guys. They don't praise Israel, but they're clearly not fighting against them, like Saudi Arabia, him. It's unfortunate.
He sent his army to kill the civilians, but look, I don't want to cause any troubles, and I'm not a violent person. I don't like we have seen enough wars, and I don't want anyone to attack on Israel from Syria or elsewhere. However, it's a question to ask. If Israel is inside Syria and occupying your countries, and Giuliani's army received countless of American anti-tank missiles from the, I will remember the name of the weapon now, and they used it against the Syrian army tanks, against new Russian tanks, and destroyed them, countless number of Syrian tanks, by American Tau missiles. Like, where are these Tau missiles now to defend,
he's standing back and letting Israel invade them?
They don't.
Yeah, no, it's kind of weird. He's allowing them to invade his country and do nothing. So besides from pressuring like Trump, is there anything else that Americans can do, or is that kind of the main thing right now?
Actually, yes. If they have their representative in the Senate, in the Congress, they have to understand. For example, you have people like Joe Wilson. He's Israel First U.S. representative, and there are so many other people who work day and night for this regime change to be materialized and to succeed. And now you see the outcome of it, and how many people are getting killed because of policies engineered and pushed by representatives like Joe Wilson in the U.S., and there's so many other of neocons in Congress who working for, like, they say, like, if you go to their pages, they speak more about Israel than they speak about their country.
Yep,
and
on Twitter.
It's mind-boggling.
Yeah, I was gonna say, a lot of these people's Twitters, it's all Israel. It's all they tweet about. And if you look at their offices, they have big Israel flags up there, not American. It's just been insane to see that it's an American.
Yes, and then you have this AIPAC tracker page just posting posters of how much money these representatives received from AIPAC. And I know that they are tied and they have their interest with AIPAC. However, if their representative is not paid by AIPAC, or they don't know much about what's going on in Syria, they need to call their representative at least to ask them to say something about the atrocities against civilians. I'm not saying that they should come and do regime change in Syria, send troops, but at least raise the voice.
At least try to get Trump to pressure, like I said, Turkey, to tell them to stop doing the killings. Because like I said, there's a good chance they would listen, because that seems like all their funding and stuff and all their backup came through, Turkey into Qatar.
Yeah, maybe Elon Musk retweeted the other day, he posted a video of Trump from 2015, and he said prophetic, because Trump was speaking about these terrorists, and he says, like, we don't know who are these people, like they're Al-Qaeda, they could come and kill us. You know, why are we giving weapons to these people? And he says prophetic. So if he knows about it, I think also people can, seriously, because on X he's communicating sometimes with people, like post comments under his posts, trying to raise awareness about what's happening. On Mario Naufal, he works for him, for Elon Musk, right? I don't know. They're always together. It's like so many people that Elon Musk, like if you go to Elon Musk's page and see who is he amplifying, you know who is he cooperating with. So they can make some noise, because Elon Musk is always also with Trump.
He has a voice of Trump as well, which, you know, is important. You know, people that have a line to him, because he's got a lot of power. You know, like you said earlier, there's people. I'm not going to like look at someone as a hero. I'm going to criticize them when they do good, and I'm going to praise them when they, or criticize them when they do bad, praise them when they do good. And that's why I'm with Trump. And a lot of people with Trump, or they're either farly everything he does they're against, or everything he does they praise. They don't like actually look if it was good or bad. They look at him as the worst villain ever or the biggest hero ever. And really, he's just a man somewhere in the middle.
I think Donald Trump is a unique figure in American politics. I haven't seen anyone like him for a very long time.
Never. It's like it's just made the country unhinged on both sides. I'm in the middle, so I get constantly attacked by both sides. You know, like I'm considered right when I first started criticizing Trump. I lost so many followers, but it's just I'm going to speak what I see to be true. You know, and I praise him sometimes too. I think there's great things about Trump. There's things I love about him, and there's things I don't love about him. You know,
I in my channel, I started in 2017 on my YouTube channel, and this is when I wanted to communicate more with the Trump people, those who supported him, because he was the president, and because he was saying the right things about Syria. So I opened lots of contacts with people who voted for Trump, and I know their mentality. So many, like most people that I met who voted for Trump, I find myself like I can sit with them and drink a coffee, because I'm not drinking alcohol now. So I didn't become a Muslim. I just stopped drinking alcohol.
Just stop drinking alcohol,
Yeah, but I can see myself sitting and having a conversation like I'm doing with you, you know, like we're on the same page on so many things. But then we have some people who are really with Trump, whatever he does, like that's also means like you're becoming an ideologue, you know, you shouldn't really idealize someone. Yeah, it's a cult.
If he would turn on Israel, man, that all the people that would follow him, that would be massive. But it doesn't look too likely. It does not look like he's turning on Israel.
But he has lots of influencers, it seems, working for him, and especially on the conservative side. And everything is fine when it comes to Ukraine. You don't want to send your billions there, but don't mention Israel. It's just a taboo, you know.
Some of these guys are paid. I've had other ones tell me they agree with me on Israel, but they just don't want to break from Trump because they know their audience will turn on them, which is kind of sucks. That's how they are, you know. So my audience turned on me, but I have to speak what's true. And I've had a lot of big influencers that support Trump have told me that. So
yeah, I think
that's very interesting.
This is something that I noticed in the U.S. So many people who had an integrity and they were like, right is right, wrong is wrong, but it doesn't mean that someone has an integrity forever, because he could have this for 10 years, and then all of a sudden you see that he has become like a trumpet for one politician.
For Israel,
you know?
yeah. You know, it sucks when you see it, but it's the reality of things. And you have to realize if you've loved someone, looked up to them, if they start doing something bad, you better call it out and notice it, because if you ignore it, it's just going to keep getting worse and worse.
Yeah, it's not like I called out Jordan Peterson, and Jordan Peterson was someone, like I was in a dark place for some time, as any other man in his life. This crisis, you don't know where are you heading, what are you doing, do you want to get, like, what's your career in the future? You know, it's so much anxiousness, you know, you don't know what's going on. And we as men, we don't express much about our feelings and our insecurities.
We don't like have these talks with each other. We keep it all to ourselves.
You know, keep it up.
When you feel a lot of pressure, we have to deal with it.
Exactly. So I was in a depressed place, you know, and then I came across Jordan Peterson, some of his teachings and his books and his lectures, and I found it like uplifting to me to look forward and to become a man, basically, you know, like take responsibility. Everything that happens in my life is my mistake now. I don't play victimhood any longer. I was very like always I'm the victim.
Blaming someone else, and that's the worst thing you can do. And you always got to take responsibility.
Then when it happened to October 7, and he never spoke a word about all these babies being murdered, and I kindly asked him, because I flew to Greece for his event 1.5-2 years ago for him, and I had a VIP ticket to shake hands with him and speak with him, and I gave him a gift and everything. And then when the Palestinians were slaughtered in daylight, like we see, like it's you can't really hide it, you know,
No.
and it's there. And if you're as Jordan Peterson speaking about the decency and human life, and you were pushing against the you're saying like lockdowns for the children is not right because it affects their psychology. What about the children who watch their mother and father got killed in front of them? You know, like at least say like I'm against the killing. You know, we're not asking much. So I asked him, what about the children in Gaza? Because he was speaking about castration of kids in the US or in Canada by this LGBT community, trans movement, etc. And I said, kids are getting killed every day in mass. And you're talking about surgery for kids. It's like, and he blocked me right away. So
Wow.
always, this was the last time I look up for someone. This is the last time I look up for someone.
No, yeah, it sucks because I like Jordan Peterson as well, and it's been so to watch his like downfall has been so. It sucks these guys you look up to are realizing they're all just corrupt or bought, or they sell out with age, or COVID is one. A lot of people turned into complete sniveling cowards, guys I used to look up to, and they just freaked out like, oh, I might die of COVID. Wear your mask, get your vaccine.
Oh,
That's just
man.
guys you look up to. It sucks seeing guys you look up to turn this way, and you have to learn. You have to judge everyone, and you can't give them a pass because you once looked up to them. So, is there anything else?
I just want to say one thing about this last thing that you said.
Yes.
During COVID times, I felt like I'm an alien living here
Same.
in Berlin, and it's we're living in a very liberal place here, and if you ask someone, "Are you not a man?" It's like he should feel like it's an insult to him, but it's a taboo even to question these things because gender is fluid and everything. But it was, for me, I felt like manhood has fallen during this
Yes.
time. Like there were no men saying no any longer. Like compliant, everybody is like afraid, and people are working police. You know, like if you go to the public transport and you're not wearing your mask and everybody is looking at you, like if somebody gives him an order, then everybody comes and kills you. You know, like what is happening to the people? They lost their minds.
Yeah, I was in a liberal city, San Francisco, when it happened. It was complete madness. I felt like an alien, like you said. Like I'd walk down the streets with no mask on, and people were like turning their backs on me, freaking out. I walk in a store, like put your mask on. It was the point I had to move. I just couldn't handle it anymore. And it's just cowardly. It's like as a man, we're all going to die. And I looked at the test early on and saw the percentage chances of me dying were so low. It's like we're going to die anyways. And then people are just going to hide in their house for a couple of years because they're scared of potentially maybe dying. It's like, have people not made peace with God? That was really eye-opening to me.
Yeah, many people haven't done any aggressive physical activity in their lives. They're probably, I don't know, their testosterone level are probably dropped a lot.
That's probably true. Yeah, the testosterone actually might be a real issue. So yeah, before we wrap up, do we miss anything on the Syria thing? I think we covered most of the important parts, right?
I would like to thank you for the opportunity, and you have a massive following, and I'm very much grateful that I'm able to communicate with your audience and deliver the voices of the people. Like I just find myself doing this as a duty to bring the voices of the people to the US, which is a very influential country. And I know there are many good people in the US. They care about human life and human decency. Therefore, it is important for us to bring this case to the audience so that the audience can also do what is on their part, talking on social media and also urging their officials and also making noise for Trump and for Tulsi. And this is something very urgent. I'm talking to people every day now in Syria, and they're just asking one thing, like stop the killing. We're going to leave the country. We don't want to stay any longer, but just stop the killing, like stop the killing and we leave. Like if you don't want us to stay in Syria, we want to leave, but just stop killing our children, and this is the maximum wish of the people, just for their sons to continue, existing. And I think this is something that we can do together with the American people and with a little bit of pressure on Donald Trump, or opening his eyes about this. I'm sure he's watching and he's seeing the reports. So we need action, more action, especially with Russia. They're in good terms now. This could be solved.
No, I couldn't agree more, which is why I had you on. I think this is so crucial. Watching those videos had me so disturbed. And I have a bunch of podcasts pre-recorded, but I'm going to jump this one right in front and get it out tonight or tomorrow because this is crucial. I'll do my part. I'll see if I can reach out to some people that have the ears of these high-ups, and hopefully we can do something because I don't want to watch more people get slaughtered. Real quick, tell people where they could find you, your YouTube, your Twitter, your...
I'm posting regular updates on my Twitter account, my personal name, Kevork Almassian, and on YouTube I post also regular podcasts, conversations, and commentaries. My YouTube channel called Syriana Analysis. So it's from Syria, but Syriana analysis, and posting both on YouTube and Rumble at the same time.
Okay, so man, thanks so much for coming on.
Thank you so much, brother.